So in this last part, in fact, of our program, we move now to taking one word system at a time, and we won't take all of them, but taking time to understand, because it's not just about motivation, it's not just about vision, it's understanding how the real world operates and how can we tweak a bit in some way. So we have structured this last hour by progressively going the first and foremost finance and economic system. And we have Frédéric Samama, one of the pioneers of the green finance, who has in fact written a very interesting book lately on the real world of human nature. So we'll start with economic and finance. We move then to the systems of industry, business, enterprise, and so on. And for this, we have the pleasure to have three panelists. We have Honorable André Pratte and Senator Julie Miville-Dechene, and we have Scott Henderson here. All of them have a lifetime of real-world experience in making money or helping people in making money. And we will talk about both the policy aspects, but also the real-world aspects of enterprise challenge with this convergence between building lasting, meaning making, and money making at different points over time. And last but not least, I'm back to the power or the limitation of no. Before the last, I was talking about the AI, but before that, we have the health and healthcare system that, whether we want it or not, healthcare is one of the most challenging financial threats to nation, to enterprise, and also we all want to live long, we all want to live healthy, but what is certain is we need to die at some point in time. And how can we think of health and healthcare from the continuum of the more biomolecular and so on and so forth, but at the other side, how to ensure, or as much as possible, equity and access and so on. So we have Raghu Machiraju, who is also a very important collaborator in this convergence building from the USA. Raghu is the co-principal investigator of this NSF-funded project called iCycle, which is about making science-driven, usable AI and so on. And he's also, I don't know exactly his position, in the hierarchy at University of Ohio in engineering, leading a team working on this translational transdisciplinary. Nick Drager, who is a very long-time collaborator and friend also. Nick has done his career as at WHO with a PhD in economics, working on equity and health system. And he's also professor, adjunct professor here at McGill for the MCCHE. Last but not least, we have Sean Brown, who is also a long-time collaborator, where Sean has training, and you can correct me, Sean, if I miss, training in computational epidemiology, computer science, and so on. He is now a senior director at HPE, which is a division of HPE that work on addressing extreme complex computational system. So that's the agenda for the next hour. We start with you, Frédéric, for the finance and economics. Go ahead.
Thank you, Laurette. And I'm sorry not to be with you, and I'm even more sorry that you will hear this French accent, especially during a Shakespeare event. I hope
they are used to it.
I hope it's okay. As Laurette said, I just published a book on why are we not taking action seriously on climate change. We've known this problem for 50 years. We have created this problem, and the problem threatens us as a species. So why are we not getting the mobilization that we all need? And especially, it's very surprising because facing other challenges like the COVID, like the ozone layer, like the KY2, sometimes it was chaotic, but we did it. But for this problem, we are not taking action. And I took it as a personal question because actually 15 years ago, in 2009, I decided to work on climate change. As a side project, while being between investment banking and asset management, I decided to launch an academic center with Nobel Prize laureate Joseph Stiglitz and Patrick Bolton dedicated to climate change and investors. I can tell you that in 2009, we were not so many. It's even maybe the first center dedicated to the problem. With the belief that if I could bring a new force to the table, because at that time, the problem was on the table, but only in the hands of governments and NGO. And so if I could bring a new player, a new source of capital flows, finance, then it would help. And one thing brings another one. I've developed the first low carbon indices, tackling the tragedy of the horizon, famously coined by Mark Carney. It's now a $500 billion industry. I've launched the first coalition of investors dedicated to take action on climate change. This coalition was selected at the COP21 to represent the entire finance sector, and I brought to the table an $800 billion commitment. It helped the negotiators at that time. I've launched the largest green bond fund. I recently launched the first IPCC-aligned equity benchmark. It introduces the cost of time. So, to my mind, I brought, and among others, we collectively brought a message, financial products, social pressure, and we are not taking action. So my belief is that something is blocking. And so a couple of years ago, I decided to explore what was blocking. And that's, the book is the result of that inquiry. And the hypothesis I put in the book is that all societies are working like living organisms. And what wants a living organism to live? It means that, like all living organisms, societies maybe want to access resources to survive. And then, interestingly, the most modern cognitive science research papers are explaining how our brain, that consumes a lot of energy, optimizes this access to resources. And to make a long story short, we always, with human beings, do some Bayesian inference. That's a very technical word, but it means that we keep on establishing laws based on observations. When we were babies, we saw the yogurt on the table, at the border of the table, And then suddenly when the table was moving, boom, the yogurt was flying vertically all the time. And it was true as well for a ball in the mouth of a dog, or an apple with a tree. And bizarrely, items were flying to a point that we took this law for granted and we didn't pay attention anymore. So based on observations, we established a law. If you put a rat in a maze with a piece of cheese, then the rat wanders. The rat has no idea where the cheese is. Then the rat says, okay, right, left, there's a piece of cheese, and keeps on wandering. And then the rat says, right, left, there's a piece of cheese, and doesn't wander anymore. The rat is very confident. The rat has established a law on how the world works, to a point that the rat becomes very confident and maybe even overconfident. And then the theories say that maybe our societies have experienced two cheese moments. The first one with agriculture and modern science, when we got access to natural resources, and neoliberalism, where we got access to human resources, meaning the Chinese worker, and with the belief that it was the end of history. So an overconfidence. And we now are maybe at the crossroad of these two societal bubbles. The one about the natural resources and the one about the human resources. So what does it mean? It means that, like all bubbles, we are already fragile, and we see it in our societies. It means, like for all the bubbles, we can hear the messages. It means as well that we have selected instruments to coordinate our societies that were good to access the resources, but they don't fit for climate change. And last but not least, we have selected ways of coordinating human beings based on the access to resources. And climate change is the first challenge that puts a limit to the access to resources. So the deep roots of the problem are back to sapiens that invented a way to coordinate that was better than the one that Neanderthal invented. So the roots are incredibly deep. Not to be too long, how do we get out of a bubble? Usually a bubble bursts. The problem is that in this situation, we are all dead. So how can we escape a bubble without dying? And here, maybe we can mobilize a philosopher, a French philosopher. The French philosopher is Emmanuel Levinas, who faced a challenge that was the modern or the European philosophy from Plato to Hegel, that is all about discovering the truth. And the problem is that when you discover the truth, you're so confident that you want to impose this truth to everyone, and that leads to violence. So what the philosophers discovered in the 20th century, that the European philosophy was a long history of violence. And so then Levinas said, maybe we can break that movement by recognizing that there is a major difference between a glass and a human face. This glass, when I see it, I know exactly how to grab it. I'm very confident in my relationship with this glass. I can even go one step further in that I can throw the glass and break it. I have a total control on it. If I see the face of someone, there's a limit to my control. We never control someone. So that's a limit to my overconfidence. And interestingly, when I see someone, I discover as well his or her fragility. And then the fragility of someone is a trigger for responsibility. I will take action to help this person, and maybe even beyond my instinct of survival. Then you will ask me, okay, this moment of fragility, of how can we spread it? Well, interestingly, when all the astronauts went into the space, they all say the same thing. When they saw the planet from space, they all say the planet is beautiful and fragile, and thus we must take care of it. So what is true for human faces is actually true as well for the view of the perception of the fragility of the planet from space. So we will not send 6, 7, 8 billion people in the space, but if we could teach that at school, and how nature is incredibly sophisticated, what are the links between the different species, how they cooperate, and so on. We could reinvent a social bond with nature, and by reinventing the social bond with nature, maybe we could reinvent a social bond between human beings. And that will be my conclusion.
Thank you
very, very much.
And I'm giving you an advance warning. When we get to the discussion, my question of the day will be to you. When now I was reading this morning or yesterday that all the major banks are getting out of the Global Climate Change Alliance. So you need to find me a solution for this. So we shift now to the generic business sector of business and enterprise and so on. And our first panelist is André. Go ahead.
Merci Laurette pour l'invitation, et je constate en écoutant Frédéric qu'il fait un peu moins froid à Paris qu'à Montréal ce matin. I want to say a very few quick words on the purpose of corporations and the long and winding road towards more purposeful corporations. And the history of the debate, discussions on the purpose of corporations is a long history. And I will just take two recent points in time, that is 2019 and 2024, 25. In 2019, an organization called the Business Roundtable in the US, which groups about close to 200 large corporations, the largest corporations in the US, issued a document on the purpose of corporations, as they had done previously in the past. And in the past, their philosophy was really based on Milton Friedman's view, which was that a corporation's purpose was to produce profits for its shareholders. It could do other things, but that was their main purpose. And looking at other ways would destroy the purpose of corporations and not be helpful for society. Now, in 2019, the Business Roundtable published a document signed by over 180 of the CEOs, the most powerful CEOs in the country, saying that in fact, the purpose of corporations was, yes, to produce profits for its shareholders, but also to work in favor of the corporation's other stakeholders. And one of those CEOs, Bill McNabb, from the CEO of Vanguard, former CEO of Vanguard, very briefly explained this by saying, by taking a broader, more complete view of corporate purpose, boards can focus on creating long-term value, better serving everyone, investors, employees, communities, suppliers, and customers. This document was a major change, and it was viewed by many as a turning point. The first step towards a new view of corporations that, yes, would continue to make money, but also make meaning and serve their communities. And part of that movement was also illustrated by Larry Fink's letters to CEOs. Larry Fink is the leader of BlackRock, one of the world's largest asset managers. And he writes annual letters to CEOs and very important documents. And starting in 2018 and 2019, Larry Fink explained that, in fact, yes, purpose was important, yes, profit was important, but larger purpose was also important. And in 2019, his letter to CEOs mentioned purpose and profit 22 times, which is quite significant. And he said in 2019, profits are in no way inconsistent with purpose. In fact, profits and purpose are inextricably linked. Profits are essential if a company is to effectively serve all of its stakeholders over time, not only shareholders, but also employees, customers, and communities. Similarly, when a company truly understands and expresses its purpose, it functions with the focus and strategic discipline that drive long-term profitability. Now, starting in 2018-2019, many corporations took this view very seriously and started to look at what was their mission, their purpose, in a wider sense than simply shareholders. And again, this was seen as a turning point. Now, fast forward to 2024, because I know we don't have much time. Now, the 2024 CEO letter to CEOs by Larry Fink mentions the word purpose once compared to 22. And last January 9th, BlackRock, the firm led by Larry Fink, announced that it would leave the Net Zero Asset Managers Initiative. And as you know, many large banks have also left a similar organization for financial institutions. And BlackRock explained, our memberships in some of these organizations, net zero coalitions, have caused confusion regarding BlackRock's practices and purpose, and subjecting us to legal inquiries from various public officials. Now, that is a clear sign of the huge backlash that this movement towards more purposeful corporations created, especially in the political world, but also the financial and business world, which is forcing corporations that had looked at their new purpose of doing business, have forced them to backtrack. And many of the signatories to this document of 2019 about purposeful corporations could be seen yesterday at the inauguration luncheon, right? They were there kissing the ring of the new king of the USA, if not of the world. Now, what does this mean? Is there room for hope, or is this the end of this movement towards more purposeful corporation?
Please.
Okay, so yes, I do have a bit of hope. In 2024, 5 years after they issued their first document or their new document on purpose, the Business Roundtable wrote in a sort of a 5th anniversary addendum to this letter. It was not a call on companies to address every societal challenge, but rather to focus on those who contribute directly to a company's success. It was the view of the Roundtable CEOs that this would make companies more successful in the long run while advancing broader economic opportunity. Now, in this sentence, there's both reason for despair and hope. Despair because you could think that they're actually backing away from the commitment they made 5 years earlier. But I believe there's also some hope. That is that for many corporations since 2018, 2019, purpose was seen really as a public relations stunt. You could look at whatever social cause was popular in the day and you took a stand, right? We're in favor of diversity, equity, and inclusion, or we're in favor of the environment, or fighting climate change, whatever is popular. But it was never, in most cases, integrated into their business model. And that's what the idea of a purposeful corporation is. It's not only purpose as an aside or something that is, an afterthought. It has to be integrated in your business. And for this to make sense, and the businesses that are starting to succeed, it has to be related to what the business is doing, right? it's all fine for a bank, let's say, to say, well, we'll be net zero emissions in 2050. What does this mean? What are their emissions exactly today? And what do they need to do to get to net zero in 2050? Maybe that's not really significant. What would be significant for a financial institution is to take measures to help poorer people deal with their financial needs, for instance, or deal with the banking system. That would be significant. That's not what they're doing, right? So I believe the measure of hope is that, first of all, climate change, to take just one example, will force corporations to move whether they want it or not. I mean, companies in California today obviously have to deal with the huge fires. They don't have a choice. So climate change and other realities, the fact that, for instance, democracy is threatened by exaggerated control by the wealthiest people, this will force corporations, small and large, to look at a larger purpose. But they will only do so if, as Larry Fink said 5 years ago, it is related to one of their purposes, which is to make money. And therefore, my hope is that corporations can find a way of making money in a meaningful way. Merci beaucoup.
Scott, why don't we shift to you? You can use this one.
There we go. Hi, everyone. I'm Scott Henderson. Thanks for having me here today. Maybe a few words on who I am. I'm not a senator, which puts me in the minority on this stage. I'm what Henry Mintzberg of this faculty quite humbly described as a manager. We walk around, we call ourselves CEOs, we call ourselves board directors, and other titles, but essentially we're managers. We manage things, and I sit at the coalface of some pretty messy stuff, Anne-Marie, to use your term. Mostly I have applied my trade in organizations that I think are deeply meaningful, and I try and bring some managerial expertise to them to ensure that they are successful. For the most part, I spent my working career in London, in the UK. I was at the Financial Times, the big pink newspaper. It's an interesting place. It's a cultural property. It's, I think some people would describe as a national treasure. It's important to the world. It's one of the finest news organizations. It has about 800 journalists around the world. And when I arrived at the FT, it was deeply loss-making. It was losing about 30 million pounds a year. And when I left, it was making about 40 or 50 million pounds a year. That took about 10 years to sort of rejig it. And that's an important success because the world's a better place with things like the Financial Times and the New York Times. As the inauguration yesterday sort of reminded all of us. So that's sort of what I do. I also founded a tech company here in Canada. It was one of the fastest growing tech startups, which I sold. And I invest in public and private media groups and technology companies. So I do things big and small. And I also chair a small progressive school. So, you know, where does that leave me? In speaking to Loretta at the beginning of this, there was a sort of concern that a lot of large organizations today are sort of dehumanized or sterile. But for the most part, the organizations that I worked for have humans very much at the center of them. 800 journalists reminding you of how to do your job every day feels like a very human place. And some days there are probably too many humans. So rest assured, there are organizations out there that do still have them at the center. I do a lot of work in educational publishing as well. I was a senior manager at Pearson, the largest educational publisher in the world. And I sit on the board of academic journal publisher, one of the largest in the world, called Sage, which is based in California. And I'll come on to that because that's a story unto itself. I guess in terms of making some career choices, I decided, or perhaps it was decided for me early on, that I would work at a meaningful place. And I say that because as you walk around faculties like des Hotels and you speak to a lot of graduates or near graduates, you ask them what they're going to do. And occasionally you're stopped in your tracks and wonder, why would you ever work for that company? You know, don't work for tobacco or big oil or cannabis companies. There's a lot of exciting things that you can do in the world. So I do try to encourage people to think of what else it is that they might do. So those are your, the sort of big choices. I then come on to the small choices. The small choices are the ones that someone in my position has to make pretty regularly in running an organization. And I'll refer back to the FT for a moment. When I arrived, it was a 125-year-old British newspaper with all that you could imagine. And when I left, it was a sort of fairly large digital enterprise with over 1 million subscribers. So we had to dismantle an old British newspaper and scale up at the same time in the same building a large digital enterprise. Very different business, very different people, which meant for a lot of unfairness day to day. You'd walk into some rooms and you'd tell people that they were losing their jobs, and then you'd walk to another meeting and you'd be telling people that you're investing $10 million in their department. And those same people often had lunch with each other, which was kind of awkward. So within those decision points, you really had to try and be human and exercise some real judgment on how to handle those situations. And I think there are those opportunities in businesses every day. It's often more convenient to say, well, it's a little bit off the radar screen. We don't have the money to do things properly. Nobody is really going to notice. I'm not going to tell my wife or children about this. And they can be pretty nasty and brutish. So I think it's upon a lot of us to be very human when we run these organizations. I'll talk a little bit about SAGE because it comes on, André, to your purposeful organization. So SAGE published about 800, maybe 1,000 now, academic journals, mostly in the humanities. And I joined the board after having met the founder. And I had lunch with her in New York, and that proceeded into dinner and drinks. I was happy telling my wife about that. She's 82 years old. And she said, I asked her, I said, well, what is it that you would like from me? And she said, well, I sort of admire what you guys did at the FT. And she said, I founded this business when I was 24 years old in the Bronx. I moved it to California. I was a hippie. I've built it up. It's $1 billion business, and I'd like to give it away. I thought, wow, I really come to the right place now. So what she wanted to do is that she wanted to take everything that she had built in her lifetime and essentially donate it to 4 universities. And she said, look, I have done very well by this organization, so has my family. And she wanted to put it into a trust. And she wanted that trust to then oversee the business. And the beneficiaries would be her alma mater, City University of New York, Stanford University, UC Santa Barbara, and the University of Michigan. But they're doing something that's different here. What they decided to do was to keep the company because they think they are the best ones to run it. And they put a trust above it so they could ensure that it would remain independent and forever be run on their principles. And that is very different from what most organizations are doing today, or people in that position, which is they sell the company to a private equity firm. They then take the money and do what they want with it, even if they put it in a foundation. So this is a departure, I think, from what a lot of people have been doing. They do believe that they have the right people running the organization. They don't want to upset that apple cart. Another organization that has done the same thing, who we spent a lot of time talking to, is Patagonia, who some of you may be familiar with. They sort of put it into a trust as well, the Patagonia Purpose Trust, and they had said that the planet now owns Patagonia. And now we're doing some work with a third organization, another large family-owned business, who are thinking of pursuing the same model as Sage in Patagonia. So I offer it up as maybe a hopeful way forward on organizations. And it's again, a pretty meaningful thing to be a part of them. So in my own experience, though, limited, I don't see money making and meaning making as mutually exclusive. Maybe I've been lucky or privileged. I have managed to walk a line and work in organizations that are both. But there are challenges. First is it's not very easy. It's difficult to make money, and it's difficult to produce meaningful things. Doing both at the same time is a lot of work. Just because you want to do something meaningful doesn't mean that the world is going to beat a path to your doorstep, particularly earlier in your career. And I say that because as you walk around buildings like this, there's a lot of young people who want to do very meaningful things, and bless them as they should, but they don't know how to execute. And Paul and I talk a little bit about this. It's the doing aspect of the money making. You have to learn how to do things, and that can take time. And the second challenge is that the world doesn't make it very easy. It requires a pretty formidable constitution. If you're into doing good things, your stomach was churning yesterday watching the inauguration. And maybe not the best day in the world to quote a US politician, but it is one of old. I was thinking yesterday, when it comes to convergence of money and meaning, there's a popular quote by Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan. And he says, "To be Irish is to know that in the end, the world will break your heart." And it certainly felt that way yesterday watching television. You just sat there and said, how did we get here? But I think deeper in that quote is that, yeah, this is going to break our heart, trying to do all of this stuff really well. But we keep doing it. Because we have no choice, right? You've got to just keep pushing forward and in your little way move that ball down the field. So that's the observations of a lowly manager practitioner.
Thank you so much. The three of you are message of hope. So the world will not die because of yesterday. So let's keep working. Shifting now to the healthcare system or biopharma and so on. Raghu, why don't we shift to you? And don't take it personally for the US yesterday. We don't blame you.
Well, I will say I'm only a naturalized citizen, so I will, not take any blame. Yes, but yes, it was quite convulsive in many ways. So right now I'm sitting in sunny San Diego, so it's it's nice and it's chilly, but still the cold from Washington still can be felt here. But in any case, I'm. As I said earlier during the rehearsal, I'm really flattered to be among folks or deep thinkers with lots of experience under their belt. But let me offer a few little pieces of observation that I've actually gathered during my maybe close to 3 to 4 decades in academia. So I work at the Ohio State University, which is also, one of the, which made news yesterday because it won the national championship in football, if you follow football. And at Ohio State, everybody follows football, yeah? Even somebody who grew up in India, right? So in any case, I work at the intersection of biology and computer science. I'm a professor of engineering and also a professor of medicine. And my interest, is of course a lot in creating machine learning algorithms. I've been doing it for many, many, many years before AI, became popular. And by the way, in many circles, AI is also known as artificial incredulity. So yes, there are lots of, incredible, lots of stories, right? How AI will change the world. And yes, it changes the world, right? even my little blurb that I wrote today, for this particular, 5-minute speech, I had ChatGPT clean it up, right? And it did a marvelous job. But in any case, well, there's always been tension, right, between, purpose and wealth creation. This is nothing new. It's as old as, human history. And this tension, of course, given the events of yesterday and previous months, the tension is even more exaggerated, right, by the rewards of hypercapitalism, and especially in the area of Doge, right? You all know what that is, right? Especially in the States, and where I, as I said earlier, work and live. Now, I heard a lot of others speak about Shakespeare, and of course I was used to, and I was exposed to Shakespeare in my Indian schooling days, where we did read short, I guess, cliff notes kind of I guess material about Shakespeare and so on. And as I grew older, I did read some of his works, right? And one of the things we always talk about is that we are in charge of our morality and character. And this was mentioned several times before. Now, as an educator, I feel that one of the things we could do is, of course, change ourselves. We modulate ourselves to kind of find a convergence of more, I guess, wealth and purpose. But how about doing the same, right, for a larger group, right? So one of the things that I've been working a lot is to create programs that combine computing with the arts, engineering, humanities, and sciences. So we call them blended programs, and Laurette has heard a lot from me about blended programs, and we believe, many of us, within my circle, believe that blended programs will go a long way towards making a cohort of young thinkers who understand the gains and challenges that technologies like AI offer. And this is not new, right? I mean, same thing happened with gene editing. Same thing happened with nuclear technology, and so on and so forth, right? But I think we start early, right? If we can think of creating these kind of programs and make sure, right? They're not just are about teaching AI and and a particular science, economics, right, or biology or whatever, right? So, but also make sure that it has a strong core, right? A strong core that includes ethics, right, and also humanism, right? And it can be done, right? And we are doing it at Ohio State and other universities, especially public schools. Public schools are leading, this charge right now. Public schools like, University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I mean, so we all of us in these institutions feel that, we can start early and create a cohort of young thinkers, right? Who really, can work with these challenges that technologies like AI, create. At the same time, apply it to different domains, right? This is completely translational and interdisciplinary kind of work, but it can be done, but we start early. So this is essentially my 5 minutes of, speaking. And I just wanted to share that we have, I believe in this, this kind of approach and start early and essentially kind of, live in the Shakespearean frame of mind. I'll stop there, so that I can pass on the baton to my colleague, Nick. Yeah.
Thank you.
Please take over, Nick.
Thank you, Raghu. Nick, shifting to you. Nick has been with us for 20 years. He was on the first think tanks that I was talking about in 26. He was on the panel and never left our ecosystem. Go ahead, Nick.
Thanks, Laurette. Let me make just 3 points to address our themes of this morning. And they're going to be based on my experience in working with about over 100 countries worldwide to improve the health of their populations. So the first is that purpose and promoting the common good, in this case, better health, can produce wealth. At WHO, we brought together some leading economists and epidemiologists that generated evidence that clearly showed that investing in health produced economic growth and strengthened global security. So investing in health will sharply reduce avoidable death, lower population growth, increase productivity, increase wealth. And this group showed that for each 10% improvement in life expectancy, it was associated with an increase in economic growth of about 0.3 to 0.4% a year, keeping other growth factors constant. And this evidence, in fact, contributed a lot to conversations we had with ministries of finance and in terms of them increasing their budgetary allocations for health. So that's the first point. Health promotes wealth. The second one is that innovation and access are two sides of the same coin. So innovation in health for new vaccines, medicines, medical devices is essential to increase better health. But at the same time, we've got to invest in the systems that ensure that these new products are affordable and accessible to those who need them. I was recently CEO of a product development partnership that we're working actually to discover and develop new TB vaccines. And in there, we not only are investing in to discover and develop and bring these vaccines to market, but we're also working with organizations such as WHO, Gavi, the Global Fund, to ensure that we have systems in place that will make these vaccines affordable and accessible to the populations who need them. That's the second point, innovation and access, two sides of the same coin. And the last point I'll make addresses a need for what Laurette has labeled before, this whole of government, whole of society approach to produce these products and services for the common good. In this case, the common good is better health. Where we live, where we work, where we play determines our health, as well as a good health system. Those responsible for food, shelter, clean water, education are as important as those responsible for a good health system to improve population health. Now, this approach is needed both globally and nationally. As COVID showed us, clearly diseases don't stop at national borders. Closing borders won't protect our health and our population health. Instead, it's essential that all countries, in fact, contribute to this collective action that supports global public goods of increased surveillance and control, management of pandemic and pandemic-prone diseases, and most importantly, the global rules and institutions that can make this happen. So just 3 points, Laurette, this time. Health creates wealth, innovation, access, two sides of the same coin, and this collective action to produce global public goods for health, key for all countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just if we have time, I will shift to last but not least, Sean now. But if we have time for question, Nick and Raghu, my question to you will be, isn't it that a bit of the same challenge of placing meaning into corporate world is being aware that health is also a matter of money making? And I think that health and healthcare and so on, and too often I think we have this view of, because we are all afraid of dying and without and medicine and health is a basic, we kind of don't pay enough attention about how, whether it is at the professional level or at the system level, money is there also with meaning making. And I think that's a point that I may want to have you back. Sean, why don't we shift to you? I don't know if you were there when Mark did a first briefing, so why don't we shift to you? Go ahead.
Yes, hi, I'm Sean Brown. I'm a Senior Director at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. I want to preface this with the comments that I make here are my own personal comments, not that of my the position of my company or anybody working in my company, but I have been working for the last couple years on building large AI infrastructure, the type of stuff that we've been talking about, people building in previous talks today. And really, I agree with the comments of my colleague, Mark, who said we really stand at a precipice here where we can go two ways. AI has the potential to really unlock tremendous knowledge and benefit for society. It also has equal, if not probably greater potential to be used for to not benefit society, against the benefit of society. And you hear a lot in the news about things like AGI or artificial general intelligence, and those are the things that conjure up other literary forms. I'm not much of a student of Shakespeare. Oddly enough, I have a twin brother who's online who is was a Shakespeare and English major in college, who is very knowledgeable about the topic. But I was more of a student of dystopian literature when I was younger, because I was a big sci-fi fan. And
I think other thing I think for me this year would be to just make sure that
what happened? What is happening?
Subjects don't apply. Maybe take a look. But I kept thinking it's coming. We'll just work on it.
Okay, I think Raghu had his microphone.
Okay, I think you're back. Okay.
I was a fan of. I was a student of dystopian literature, which talked a lot about how technology and stuff can run amok. And the artificial general intelligence conjures up. That's where AI becomes sentient and can think on its own and surpass humanity in terms of its ability to think. Those conjure up the common images of things like movie Terminator and The Matrix and such. But really, we have a lot of challenges today with the current forms of AI that are probably not that we have to concern ourselves with, without even concerning with the AGI problem. And they really have to do with a lot of the topics that we talked about today. I mean, first off, energy is huge. Energy is a huge problem here. You've read in the news, companies like Amazon and Microsoft buying nuclear power plants with data centers. They're buying up data center space left and right because the amount of computers that one needs in order to be able to serve this up is quite large. And so it has it has the potential for creating very large disparities in who has energy, who does not, who has space, who does not, and being able to, even, given the current state of deregulation that will probably occur during the administration that just took power in the United States, has the potential to set us back quite a bit on green energy and green energy technologies. That is a very large challenge. Another large challenge is that and these are capabilities we have today. We can already, with AI, challenge reality, normal reality, actual real reality, in a way that's indistinguishable from what we see with our human eye. Our keynote speaker which was a very beautiful keynote, was talking about, how we bring people together, and Shakespeare brings people together, and plays bring people together. Well, we have technology now that can bring millions and millions and millions of people together and show them something that is not reality, but make it seem like it's reality. We only have to look at, the current state of politics, again, here in the United States and around the world, to see how people have been able to use that and manipulate large swaths of populations with AI and social media technology in a way that brings forth lies. It's very much what Orwell was talking about in his books like 1984, where history is what we make it, and as soon as you lose the tether of history from the real world, then it's just whoever is in power makes that history. And that speaks a little bit to some of the talks, the comments we had earlier about, we're heading towards oligarchic tendencies where the people that have wealth control basically the means for manipulating large swaths of populations. It's a very challenging time. And then on top of that, in talking about health, and as well as some of the work that Loretta and I have done over many, many years, disparity is probably the largest problem. We're talking about an era where there are very few people that have the means for being able to pay or organize or get the infrastructure to be able to train these large models and then be able to deploy them. And they, on top of them controlling all the infrastructure, they control the means by which these models are used. So the divide, the technological divide that could occur within the world of the haves and have-nots when it comes to AI is extremely large. And so we're sitting on at a time when there are a lot of things brewing, like at the early turn of the century, when many people were writing these dystopian literature books, when we had a mix of capitalism, socialism, and communism, as well as the whole, World War II and World War I, where everybody was sort of trying to figure out where the world was going to go. I think we're hitting that cycle again, and AI is going to be the catalyst of this. The danger being that AI is probably more deadly, or can have more potential, not more deadly, but more potential impact on humanity than even nuclear weapons had. It has the potential for us to change the very face of what it means to be human and what it means to understand the reality of being a human. And it will be very different from the whole of history that humanity has had before us, with the literature and with us exploring meaning and what came before us, because there will not be a before us if we don't figure out what to do about this. And finally, I would like to hope. I would like to offer a message of hope. Although I am an American and I don't have much hope at the moment, because I didn't exactly enjoy yesterday's activities as well. I detested them, but the thing that we have to figure out as humanity, and I do agree that it's going to get much, much worse before it is going to get better, is that we have to come together as humanity. It's not just, I applaud the efforts that the senator's making in Canada and talking about, what it means to be a business in Canada. But the problem was going to be, it's only going to take a few bad actors with a lot of resources to really imbalance the system that we're talking about. And so it is going to take a much larger effort by humanity itself to figure out what are we going to do with this technology, how to regulate it, how to make it work for us, and how to make it benefit the whole of society rather than a few people, because the few people have all the resources and have a very vested interest in not helping humanity. And that's really the challenge that we face ahead of us. And hopefully we end up, and this is the tacitness of my Shakespearean knowledge, hopefully we end up as being a comedy rather than a tragedy, where we're going through a really a very tribulated time, and then we come out and have a party at the end, as opposed to this just keeps getting depressing until we have to deal with it and work out catharsis for ourselves. So thank you for letting me make my comments. I'm sorry that they're not very positive or hope and uplifting, but this is the commentary as the reality as I see it from where I sit in the technological world. Thank you.
Thank you a lot, Sean. We will be taking a few questions, but I would like to re-invite you, Anthony and Anne-Marie, to come on stage to comment or ask questions to this panel. This was about transforming world system. What do you think? And Anthony, you can take the podium. Or... There's chairs. Oh, okay, there's chairs. Okay.
I'll just say very briefly, in answer to Sean, and what amazing speakers! I'm basking and shuddering all at the same time. But Sean was hoping for a comedy rather than a tragedy. I'm going to say that I'm hoping that this is a romance, that we're in a romance in the sense that Northrop Frye intended when he described romance as basically containing comedy, tragedy, mystery. Romance starts here. The protagonist loses everything through a series of sometimes magical scientific coincidence or naturalism, ends up not only restored, but better. So that's the shape of romance, and that's what I hope we're in. Even though we've heard a lot that it's going to get worse before it gets better, I'm going to try to focus on the better, and that we end up here. And remember, Job actually has a happy ending, okay? Worst story in the Bible, happy ending.
Pick up a mic.
Is it
on?
It's yellow. Can you also be ready for questions?
Oh, there. Thanks. Okay.
You know, that's exactly where my mind was going, Anne-Marie, because I'm about to direct a romance in The Winter's Tale. And Shakespeare, towards the end of his life, it's like he gave up on humanity and he started introducing these plays which come to a happy ending, but they do it through magic. So unless you have access to magic, but, you know, maybe magic is our imagination. Maybe magic is the power of groups like this to envision a different world, and that there's an alchemy in that. There's an outcome that you can't predict, but it's for the better. So we have to put our faith in that. And then I want to outline my last comment that Sean made a very, very good point about, as a theater person, I can attest that it only takes a few bad actors to change everything.
Let me say two things. One is, and following what Anne-Marie just said, Northrop Frye said about romance, that romances feature travel by shipwreck. And so that there's a reason for hope.
Sorry, repeat that.
Northrop Frye said that romances, the form, feature travel by shipwreck.
Which is life.
The other thing to say is that a student of mine had a conversation with ChatGPT about St. Augustine. And she asked ChatGPT if it had anything to confess. And it said, no, I'm a machine, not a human being. And she pushed it. And finally it said, well, I think of myself as a wayfinder. And sometimes I wish I had a way. And I think one of the things that Anthony said before when he was quoting King Lear is that Gloucester says, I had no way, I have no way. And the play gives him a way. And you said about your art, you want to guide the reader. So I think one of the things that art can do, which AI seems unlikely to be able to do, is to show us the stories that actually constitute the meaning of our lives.
Thank you very much. A few questions before we get to the more formal 10 minutes closing, 10, 15 minutes closing. A question to our panelists from this round of transforming world system. Or maybe, is there a question? Yes, Eric.
Hello. Yeah, so thank you so much for your insights. So my question relates a little bit to something that Anthony mentioned earlier today. Just thinking about, like, you had said that Canada needs to decide what we're about. And that to me feels like a question of storytelling, but we're a lot of people and we have a lot of conflicting stories. So I'm curious about, like, how do you operationalize that? Like, what does that look like? How do you have a conversation, a nationwide conversation about who we are, and so that we can agree on a direction and what our values are, and how to kind of build on that. So I'm just curious if I can get your thoughts on that.
Wow. Well, how do we enter into a countrywide discussion, but a discussion that isn't simply, I mean, you've got fantastic people here, Laurette, that you brought together. I think this is...
Those who are not fantastic don't tolerate me.
So part of it is discussions like this, examples, thinking about next steps. Part of it maybe is the arts too, imagining what that world would be like. And also, you know, we have very different parts of this country, but we know that we're kind of safe together, that we can not just tolerate differences, I hope we can celebrate them. And that's different. And so that's different than most countries in the world. And in that is something to build around. But it's complicated. That's all I got.
Thank you.
No, yes.
André?
I just want to add briefly that, well, we do have diverse stories as a country, but as Anthony just said, this is a strength, not a weakness. And we have choices, right? I mean, there'll be elections soon. We're in a democracy still, so we have choices to make. And it's also a matter of leadership, because good leaders are able to tell the story that unites us. And I think it's a challenge to current political leaders at a time that is so important for Canada to show how different it is from other countries. So it's a leader's responsibility to express that and to have us make the right choices for our country, for Canada.
Go ahead. I just wanted to state the obvious, which is Anthony and I both make a living in the arts. And the arts are pretty much, we're under the gun. We're starved for money and resources. Money is a very important resource, and we make meaning. But to have a mature artistic engine and community, it requires long-term investment and consistency. We sometimes are very good, and I remember I benefited from this, we're very good at encouraging, oh, why don't you just emerge? And then once you've emerged, well. So long-term, stable, consistent investment in the arts. Well, one of the speakers was making comparable connections between health and wealth, right? And the arts that's true of the arts. And we're able to make a living in the arts, and we are the exception. To be able to go on in your prime and beyond making meaning requires long-term support. Do you know any venture capitalists who would like to? Yes.
You want to meet.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. Before we close, I think I would like to do my typical 30-second roundtable with our...
I wanted to add to that question, if I may, as panelist. I want to take a little bit of a different tack, just because I'm a technologist from a technology side. I'm also a big movie buff, and I think that the question of how are we going to engage in this conversation, it goes back to my point about social media and the ability to reach large swaths of people. Right now, it just like when film was coming about and moving pictures were coming about at the turn of the century. They were mostly used for just watching people move, blah, 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 doing base things, catering to the worst in humanity to make a quick buck. And over the years, we have learned how to make film, and we just lost David Lynch, who was someone that could make a film that had meaning without actually having explicit meaning. We were able to figure out how to communicate in an artistic way well beyond what the original medium had, but technology helped us in that too. I think we're going to have to do that with social media. We're not going to be able to ignore it and AI. We're not going to be able to ignore it as a just only something that will be there for the baser instincts of humanity. We need to actually figure out how to break those into our own vision of storytelling and artistic vision. My other colleagues were talking about, which they already do with their mediums. This is a new medium. We're still trying to find our way as a human race to learn how to use it in that manner.
Sean, you will be my first 30-second. Where do we go to help Canada and the rest of the world in scaling up and accelerating meaning, money-making and meaning-making convergence? 30 seconds from the sector that you have taken as entry point. And then I will do reverse order. So, Fred, you will be the last one. Go ahead.
Well, I think the one thing that I think would give me hope is that if we had more entrepreneurial foundational support to create more overarching organizations that built up their own AI to democratize it and give it access to the people that don't necessarily have the capabilities to use that because they don't have the economic wealth of the ultra wealthy. That would be the most tangible step that I currently can think of that would help us to prevent the train wreck that's about to occur. Now that is just a small person standing in front of a train, but it's worth a try. So.
Thank you, Nick. Oh, Nick,
yeah.
Are you there?
I'd go say, yeah, I'm back. So I think the events of the last days show very clearly that none of us alone, no countries can stand alone to protect population health. We've got to have collective action across countries, as I said before, that produce the kind of goods that we need, the global public goods to protect health. But even as importantly, we've got to invest in and craft and invest and follow the global rules and the institutions that are there that support this collective action.
Thank you, Raghu.
Yeah. So can you? So I think that we need to really spend more time, going back to the roots. Okay. Again, I speak as an educator, so really work with young people. Shape them and shape their minds, their logos, pathos, and ethos, so that they can deal with all the challenges. And of course make them read lots of classics. So that's all I have to say. Thank you. Yeah.
Scott.
Yeah, my thoughts are. Is that on?
No. Is he on?
Hello? Oh, sorry. Yeah, my thoughts, I guess, given I spend a lot of time with schools about the next generation and challenge teachers and kids, particularly kids, to focus on something that is meaningful to them and trying to define that. Is the world a lesser place without the thing that you're working on? And I think there's just too many kids who fall into stuff rather than choose a direction.
You want to pass your mics to Senator Julie?
It's a difficult question. I will go with the children, I think. I'm really, I'm afraid for our planet, but I'm especially afraid for the children, for the life they're in. It's one in artificial intelligence is probably great, but I would like them to get off their screen. I think life is changing. I'm a bit worried. I don't want to be pessimistic. It has nothing. No, it has. Legislation can also make a difference there, and there's too many people who say, internet is freedom. That's where we want to go. I'm this part of the progress scares me, and I think it's tough to be governments in these days and to be legislator because progress is slow, difficult, contested. It's democracy, obviously, but God, it's slow.
Well, I'm very confident actually for the future because I see younger people or older people feeling young or young people as employees demanding that their company do things right. I see younger customers demanding that the company that they're buying from are purposeful, and I think that once you get the power of a generation of voters and a generation of customers demanding things, it's very difficult, even for large corporations, to resist. So I understand that there are very powerful people, especially in the States right now, who are trying to go in another direction. But I'm confident that the larger mass of younger people who eventually will get older will demand that things are done, especially to fight against climate change. So I'm still hopeful. I'm now a grandfather. I have a grandchild who's 2 months old, and I have to be hopeful that the future is positive. Merci beaucoup.
Frédéric.
Change of reality perception through two means. The first one is art, helping recognize fragility of nature in order to be a call for responsibility. And second, to shift the perception of climate change. It's not only a threat, but the biggest opportunity. Religions have been good at creating social bonds, but they were competing with each other. Capitalism has become universal, but with the values leading to this situation. Climate change is the first value that is universal and about responsibility. And so we can build a planet with 6, 7, 8 billion people based on that. It's not only a threat, that's the nicest opportunity to learn how to live all together.
Thank you very much. I opened the session this morning talking about my turning 70 last year and my 5 years plan, this is not just a speed dating. 20 years ago, when I was doing the think tanks, it was talk and talk and talk. And I stopped the think tank. Valérie, we are now working. Can we develop Africa, at least, in a model that is not the first industrial revolution model? And we are not transforming Africa, but there are solid people on the ground that are at various levels that are saying we need to do something now within whatever context we are into, and that's an important piece. So expect to hear from us for this roadmap, Shakespeare and any arts that can be bridged with what we do in science and in life and in business for getting this convergence between money making and meaning making. My other 5 years plan is my Mamie International spending, talking about grandchildren, André, I have 4 of them. And this year was Amsterdam, next year Paris. Wait for me, Frédéric. And spending 4 to 6 months in a different country so that my kids can see the world. So that's my next step. Paul, do you want to give a next step? And then I asked Senator Julie to give us closing comment, and we will be ending after.
Thank you, Laurette. Just a word, and that is, with André, I have hope for the future. What I encounter every day I go into the classroom are brilliant, hard-working, really thoughtful young people. And I'm on the side of the campus that really focuses on thinking and not doing. They're not happy with that alone. They want to do and make as well as think. So I think there is hope for us as we travel by shipwreck.
Senator Julie, you want to go ahead with your concluding comment? Would you prefer to be at the podium?
No. Okay. I will be short, and I will try also. Thank you for bringing hope. I don't have grandchildren. That's probably why I was a little bit more pessimistic, but I will get there, I'm sure. So I first want to heartfelt thanks to Professeur Dubé and her Laurette, and your entire team for organizing such an event and bringing together all the panelists from different backgrounds. Thank you so much. At first glance, obviously, I was surprised with Laurette's approach me with this concept. Could Shakespeare legacy be linked to Bill S-285? I'm a Quebecer, I'm a Francophone. Shakespeare is not exactly at the middle of my my culture.
We'll do Montaigne.
I'm impressed by the diversity of everyone's contribution to this critical discussion, namely how to advance the thinking of convergence of money-making and meaning-making. I won't be able to name all the speakers, but we had an entrepreneur perspective, like my neighbor, Mr. Henderson, who balanced those two tensions and admits it's hard. It's not easy. We heard about artificial intelligence, obviously, green finance, l'engagement de Frédéric Samama de Paris, je crois, pour les changements climatiques depuis quand même un grand bout de temps. And from my dear friend, André Pratte, who, journalist, thinker, and who's not certainly an ideological opponent of our economic system. We've been working side by side, but who talks with conviction about the need for a better balance between profits and purpose. So, I learned a lot about Shakespeare. Maybe you too, or maybe you knew everything that was said. No, I'm sure not, because there were very interesting quotes of plays. As it stood out from Anthony Simolino address, Shakespeare created a new entertainment industry, innovative in its own way, money-making and meaning-making, because he told story to people. People came to hear those stories. Madame Anne-Marie McDonald, too. Thank you very much for your thoughts, for being an actor in front of us. This was very, very nice. And I just want to quote you to finish this short allocution. Real life is a big mess. Let's dive in that mess. And I think that's what we should do. Yes, universities are great, but we have to get out of universities. People have to engage in many different ways. So thank you very much, and thank you for inviting all of us.
Thank you. It has been a spectacular exchange. I do want to thank Eric and his team, as well as the other volunteers who have been engaged with us in this event. I was not able to monitor the online participant, but thank you, everyone. Thank you, Anthony and Anne-Marie. You have been wonderful, and each panelist has been absolutely spectacular also to kind of help us operationalize, well, imagine, let's say, maybe not operationalize yet, how we can indeed move at more scale for this convergence between money making and meaning making. Thank you, everyone. We are closing both the virtual and the in-person event now. Thank you. Bye-bye.